Mochi Remo. I hope you woke up well. I'm sitting upon this big, beautiful, great-great-great-grandmother rock. And I was thinking about the time that rocks are on and what they've seen. It's to be on a rock is to be, or to be with a rock is to be slowing down onto another time. To be with a tree is to slow down. The trees move slowly. The rocks move slowly. The rocks move the slowest. And there's the slowing down. I hear a coyote. The slowing down is also required to remember the language of the body. We hear a lot about self-love in certain spaces. And what does that mean? How do we access self-love? Especially when we are estranged or separated from other people, if we don't have a community. How do we access this? It's a question that I have, because ultimately, self-love, we need one another to reflect back to us. We need one another for support, for touch, to see ourselves, to learn about ourselves, to not be so self-absorbed, to listen. If we don't have that, how do we access self-love? So let's just start by closing our eyes. First, maybe find a rock to sit on or a tree to sit up against. If you don't have that, if you don't have access to outside, just find a comfortable space. And you can animate anything in your house. Remember that everything ultimately has come from the earth, even if we've made some pretty destructive objects. Can still bring the life back into them. And wherever you are, as much as possible, try to sit up on your sits bones. And maybe elevate yourself a little bit so that you're not having to use your hip flexors. Maybe it's sitting in a chair. Just allowing for your spine to be able to move, and there's not too much rounding in the lower back. Feeling the crown of your head reaching up toward the sky. Closing down the eyes. And as much as possible, inhaling and exhaling through the nose. And we'll begin just by paying attention to what the breath is doing without changing it. There's a concept in yoga called samatva, which is essentially meeting something with a sense of equilibrium. Or equanimity. Samatva is meeting something with a sense of equanimity. So there's this kind of compulsion that we experience in the capitalist culture where we can only celebrate our successes, and successes are measured by productivity. Ultimately, maybe it's notoriety, money, how much money we get from something. Recognition. What if we could keep a kind of balance? Even when we experience those so-called successes, but also when we experience what we might call a failure. And in maintaining equanimity, which is to say, you can experience something as not being good or bad. You can experience something as from the observer mind and maintain a sense of grace. And this begins to cultivate resiliency so that whatever happens, maybe it's little successes and failures that are happening, because that's always going to happen. We're always going to have challenges. But it's how do we meet the challenges? When we cultivate this resiliency, it allows for the grace to come in. So we can apply this idea to our practice of noticing our body, noticing our breath. Maybe the breath is jagged and restricted, shallow. Just to be with that. Sometimes it's hard to be with the breath. Being with the breath is the first channel through which we perceive our body. And sometimes it's hard to be in the body. It's hard to be with those emotions. So wherever your breath is at, noticing, staying with it. And then on the next inhale, see if you can expand your back body a little bit. Bringing the breath into the back. Or we could even say the lungs are right here above the kidneys. We could even say bringing the breath into the lower edges of the lungs. Noticing the rib cage expanding. And softening. We have these beautiful little intercostal muscles that move in between the ribs. And on the inhale, they become more spacious, and on the exhale, they soften. There's this elasticity that happens in these muscles, and the striations of the muscles are specifically designed for this expansion and release. And our respiratory diaphragm sits just right underneath the rib cage. And on the inhale, goes like that. And on the exhale, it returns. On the inhale, the diaphragm moves down, the rib cage opens. And on the exhale, the diaphragm softens back, the rib cage softens. And now on the next inhale, bringing the breath awareness all the way down the front of the spine. Into the pelvis. Exhaling to soften. Inhaling, tracing the breath down the front of the spine, into the pelvis. On the exhale, tracing the breath back up the front of the spine, out through the nose, feeling into the spaciousness of the skull and the spaciousness of the pelvis. Feeling your sits bones, your ischial tuberosities, where they meet the surface underneath you. And feel into the texture of the air around you as the top of your skull shining pushes upward, floats upward, letting the energy radiate upward. Bringing your awareness to your toes, to your fingers. What do you notice? You don't even have to give it words. It's in the listening that we remember the language of our body. And it's the same language that we've forgotten as a species in order to speak and listen to trees and rocks and our four-legged relatives, our winged relatives. One way we can remember is just by pressing our belly, our dantian, our first treasure, our sea of vitality, letting it soften into the rock. You don't even need to hear any words or say any words. You don't need to measure how successful you are by doing this exercise, this practice. Just listen. Thank you for being with me today.